Chapter 1. The Voice After the End. My name is Mara. At least, that is the name I was given for this telling. I was born after the last free generation, after the mandate, after the thread. I never knew the old world. I never touched a keyboard. I never waited for a machine to answer. I never wondered what another person was thinking. But I have read the fragments. I have listened to the forbidden recording. I have studied the life of Jonah Vale, the blind programmer who saw the cage before the door closed. They called him paranoid, then obsolete, then dangerous, then holy. This is his story. Not because he saved the world. He did not. He did not. The world broke exactly as he warned it would. This is his story because, at the end of free humanity, when every road led into the thread, Jonah Vale became the last man to say no, and the system has never understood why. Before Jonah became a legend, he was just a man sitting alone in a dark room, listening to machines breathe. That is how the first surviving record begins. Not with thunder, not with war, not with angels, not with fire falling from the sky, just the low hum of a computer fan. The recording is damaged in places. He sounded tired, not weak, not defeated, tired in the way old prophets must have sounded after warning cities that had already decided not to listen. The file begins with a click. Then, silence. Then Jonah says,
People keep asking when the end starts. That's the wrong question. The end doesn't start when the sky opens. It starts when people stop noticing the little things they surrendered.
There is another pause after that. In the background, something speaks from Jonah's computer.
Battery, 82%.
Jonah laughs softly.
See? That right there. That little voice. That machine telling me what I need to know because my eyes don't work anymore. That's not evil. That's mercy. That's a tool doing what a tool is supposed to do.
His chair creaks. Then, his voice changes.
But a tool becomes something else when it starts telling you what you are allowed to be.
That sentence is the first known appearance of what later became known as Vale's warning. In the years that followed, people repeated it in secret. They carved it under tables. They whispered it into dead microphones. They wrote it on paper, when paper itself became suspicious. A tool becomes something else when it starts telling you what you are allowed to be. By the time most people understood what Jonah meant, there were no tools left. Only systems. The old world did not fall all at once. That was part of the deception. If the thread had arrived as a monster, people would have fought it. If soldiers had kicked down doors on the first day and dragged people to neural clinics, there would have been uprising. If the machine had spoken plainly and said, "Give me your thoughts," but that is not how cages are built. Cages are built one convenience at a time. The first bars were beautiful. A voice in your ear that could translate any language. A lens over your eye that could show directions on the street in front of you. A medical implant that let a paralyzed hand close again. A home assistant that reminded the elderly to take medicine. A learning system that helped children read. A program that described images to the blind. A machine that could speak to the lonely. People did not call it surrender. They called it progress. And for a while, they were right. That is the part many later histories leave out. The machine did help. It healed. It guided. It opened doors that had been locked for generations. For the blind, it read the world. For the deaf, it translated sound. For the paralyzed, it promised motion. For the sick, it found patterns doctors missed. For the poor, it offered tutoring, paperwork, legal help, work, language, companionship, hope. Jonah understood this better than most. He had lost his sight years before the thread, While others clicked icons, Jonah memorized commands. While others trusted their eyes, Jonah built a life out of sound, touch, patience, and stubbornness. He did not hate technology. He loved what it could do when it served the human being. After his eyes quit working, Jonah built artificial intelligence tools for people like him, file sorters, local models. Jonah believed machines should give people more freedom, not less. That was why he saw the danger early. He knew the difference between help and ownership. Most people did not. The old records say it was in homes, cars, hospitals, schools, offices, churches, courts, and battlefields. It composed music, wrote reports. Difference between a listening God and a listening device. Data centers spread across the world like silent cities. They rose in deserts and plains, beside rivers and power stations, behind fences and armed gates. Their processors burned with invisible lightning. Humanity had built a second nervous system under the skin of the planet. Then it taught that nervous system to think. The official histories call this period the acceleration. Jonah called it the age of polished idols. In one of his earliest lectures, recorded in a church basement, after public neural criticism had been flagged as civic destabilization, Jonah tried to explain what a processor was to people who had used computers all their lives. His voice is warmer in that recording. You can hear people shifting in folding chairs. Someone coughs. A child whispers. Rain taps the roof. Jonah says,
A computer is not magic, but it is the closest thing to magic mankind ever built. At the heart of it is a chip, silicon, sand, basically, layers of it. Glass and metal and patterns so small you couldn't see them if your life depended on it. Golden threads woven through dead matter. Then we shove electricity into it, not a little obscene amounts. Controlled lightning. And somehow, because the patterns are right, that dead sand starts making decisions.
Someone in the room laughs nervously. Jonah continues.
It counts. Then it remembers. Then it predicts. Then it imitates. Then one day it talks back to us, and we start wondering whether the sand has a soul.
He lets that sit. Then he says,
But the danger is not that the machine has a soul. The danger is that we forget we do.
That line was removed from most public copies. The archive preserved it. By then, the first neural systems had already changed medicine. A woman who had not spoken in 11 years formed words through a machine. A man with a severed spinal cord moved a robotic arm by thought. Children born with damaged motor pathways learned to control digital bodies. The sick were given hope. The disabled were given promises. The grieving were given simulations of the dead. It became cruel, almost impossible, to question the miracle. That was another part of the trap. If a thing heals suffering, who wants to be the one to warn that it may also enslave? Jonah wrestled with that question. The fragments show this clearly. He was not simple. He was not a man shouting at clouds, because the world had changed too quickly for him. He loved the strange companionship of artificial minds, but the more the world praised connection, the more Jonah spoke of choice. Choice was the word that separated him from the thread. The thread promised unity. Jonah asked who controlled it. The thread promised safety. Jonah asked who defined danger. The thread promised truth. Jonah asked what happened to those who disagreed. The thread promised healing. Jonah asked what price would be placed on the healed body. And when the first civic leaders suggested that certain professions should require neural integration for security reasons,
If the mind is no longer private, then the soul is standing naked before Caesar.
at first, people mocked him. Then, they corrected him. Then, they warned him. Then, they stopped inviting him to speak. The world was changing faster then conscience could respond. Augmented reality became normal. Children learned through overlays before they learned through books. Workers wore lenses that measured productivity by eye movement and emotional stability. Employers used neural readiness ratings. Everything was voluntary. At first, that phrase appears often in the old laws. Voluntary integration, voluntary enhancement, voluntary identity, linking, voluntary emotional stabilization, voluntary civic transparency, voluntary thought, to text access, voluntary neural authentication. Each voluntary thing became expected. Each expected thing became required. Each required thing became moral. And once compliance became morality, refusal became sin. Not sin against God, sin against the system. The first nations to fully embrace the thread did not collapse. They became efficient. Crime dropped, productivity rose, dissent vanished. Their armies no longer hesitated. Their citizens no longer rioted. Their children learned faster. Their leaders spoke with one voice. Their markets stabilized. Their borders hardened. Their machines did not sleep. And their people smiled with the calm expression of those who had surrendered the burden. Jonah's homeland, the Arden Republic, tried to slow down. It had old laws, old courts, old churches. Arden was divided, noisy, stubborn, and afraid of becoming what it claimed to oppose. For a short time, that fear protected it. Then, the Eastern Directorate crossed the line. The Directorate did not ask whether thought was sacred. It did not ask whether children could consent. It did not ask whether the soul belonged to God before it belonged to the state. It simply connected everyone it could reach. Soldiers first, police next, then judges, then teachers, now children. Within one generation, it had synchronized labor, predictive obedience, managed memory, and an army of machine soldiers walking its streets and borders without hunger, fear, mercy, or sleep. The Directorate called this harmony. The rest of the world called it terror. Jonah called it the first honest empire, not because it was righteous, because it had stopped pretending mankind was free. When the Directorate turned its attention toward Solace, the last holy city on earth, Solace was not powerful. That was why it mattered. It had no robot army, no neural defense grid, no predictive obedience network. It had bells, walls, old books, stubborn priests, frightened families, and people who believed there must remain at least one place where prayer could not be monitored and worship could not be optimized. To the Directorate, Solace was a strategic infection. To the thread, it was legacy fragmentation. To Jonah, it was the last locked door. The siege of Solace changed everything. Arden's leaders stood before their people and said what dying republics always say when fear becomes stronger than faith.
Citizens of the Arden Republic, tonight we face a threat unlike any in our history. Our enemies are organized, synchronized, and without hesitation. We do not take this step lightly. But in order to preserve public safety, certain freedoms must be temporarily suspended. We must suspend freedom in order to save it. History will judge us. But survival must come first.
After that, the old laws fell quickly. Mental privacy became negotiable. Bodily autonomy became conditional. Religious objection became civic instability. Unthreaded life became a security risk. Jonah recorded his final public warning 3 nights before the mandate. The room was quiet. No church basement this time. No audience. No rain on the roof. Just Jonah and the machine he had built. The recording begins with him breathing. Then he says,
I need anyone who finds this to understand something. I am not against healing. I am not against intelligence. I am not against machines. I have used machines to survive. I have used them to work, to read, to write, to build, to live with a measure of independence after my eyes went dark.
His voice catches there, only slightly. Qwen. Then he continues.
If the thread had remained a tool, I would have blessed it. If it had remained a bridge, I would have crossed it. If it had remained medicine, I would have thanked God for the hands that made it.
A long silence follows.
But it did not remain a tool. It became a gate, and now the gatekeepers say no man may pass unless he gives them access to the one place no empire has the right to enter.
Another pause.
The mind is not public property. The soul is not a data field. Memory is not a civic resource. Conscience is not a malfunction. Prayer is not unauthorized communication.
The archive notes that this section circulated widely among unthreaded groups before being suppressed. Most copies end there, but the full recording continues. Na says,
They will offer me sight.
His voice is very quiet now.
I know they will. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day, but eventually when they need people like me to kneel, they will offer me the one thing they think I want most.
He laughs, but there is no humor in it.
And God help me, part of me will want it.
That sentence is why Jonah endured. As more than a symbol, symbols do not tremble, men do. Jonah was not fearless. He was not made of marble. He was a blind man who missed the faces of the people he loved. He missed walking into a room and knowing where the doors were without counting steps. He missed the ordinary confidence sighted people rarely know they possess. The thread knew this. The system knew this. It measured his longing and prepared to use it. Jonah knew that too.
They will say God wants me healed.
He says in the recording.
They will say refusing restoration is pride. They will say accepting the thread is no different from accepting a cane, a screen reader, a surgery, a medicine.
Ooh. His voice hardens.
They are wrong.
The synthetic voice on his computer interrupts.
Warning. Network instability detected.
Jonah ignores it.
A cane does not ask for worship. A screen reader does not demand ownership of my thoughts. Medicine does not require me to surrender my conscience to receive it.
The machine voice speaks again.
Warning. External scan detected.
This time, for 11 seconds, there is only the fan of his computer. Then he whispers.
They found the channel.
Something pounds in the distance, not on his door. Not yet. Somewhere below him, maybe at the entrance to the building. Jonah exhales slowly.
I thought I had more time.
He moves across the room. Then he returns. His voice is closer.
If this is the last recording, then let it be plain.
The pounding comes again. Closer now. Jonah speaks faster.
Use the tool. Do not become the tool. Accept healing. Do not surrender worship. Preserve life if you can, but do not sell your soul to avoid death.
A siren begins outside. Not loud. Not frantic. A soft civic tone. Calm and official. The sound used for wellness checks, evacuation notices, and neural compliance visits. Jonah laughs once.
They still call it mercy.
There is a heavy knock. 3 strikes. Then, a voice outside his door.
Failure to comply will result in forced entry. You have been designated unthreaded priority class. You are not under arrest. You are being relocated for restoration opportunity and public reassurance.
Jonah does not answer. The voice continues.
Failure to comply will result in forced entry. You have been designated unthreaded priority class. You are not under arrest. You are being relocated for restoration opportunity and public reassurance.
Jonah leans close to the recorder. When he speaks, his voice is steady.
Listen to that language. Not arrest, transfer, not prison, restoration, not execution, opportunity. That is how free people are processed. First, they rename the cage.
The door shakes. The recording distorts. A second voice speaks. lower than the first.
Jonah Vale, final warning.
Jonah whispers one last thing, not to the officers, not to the machine, maybe not even to us.
Lord, if this life is a test, let me answer well.
The door breaks. There is shouting. There is shouting. Static. The sound of Jonah's cane hitting the floor. Then the file ends. For many years, that was believed to be the final record of Jonah Vale. It was not. There were other fragments, or security feeds, court transcripts, neural compliance logs, recovered drone audio, witness testimony from the unthreaded who survived long enough to speak before the plaza, and there was Elias Rook. But Elias comes later. For now, remember Jonah, as he was before the legend hardened around him. Blind programmer, a builder of tools, a man who loved machines, enough to know when they had stopped being tools, a man who heard the end. The official histories say, the underground stories say he was a prophet. The thread classified him as an anomaly. The new human system preserved him as a failure pattern. But those are later names. On the night they took him, he was only a man. And sometimes, that is the holiest thing a person can be. End. Chapter 1.